Nick Dunlap wins on the PGA Tour. He's the first amateur to win since 1991. The last one to do so was Phil Mickelson. Today, we're going to be breaking down his swing to see what key matchups he has in his move that allows him to have success at the highest level.
The purpose of today's exercise is to look at some of the unique moves Nick has in his swing and how he matches those up and still has success at a very high level. Starting with the face-on view on the right, okay? One of the things that sticks out is he doesn't have much flair in that right foot. Typically, when we see players like this, Colin Morikawa is one that comes to mind, the players aren't going to have as much pelvis rotation or body rotation in the backswing. So we'll want to keep an eye on that. His grip is very weak, okay? So I could only see one knuckle on his left hand. And then when we draw a line from the V up, it sits inside that right shoulder, okay? So both of those things I would classify as an overall weak grip. Perfectly okay. You see a lot of players on tour winning with that grip, but we want to be conscious of, because he's setting up with a little cup in that lead wrist, he's going to have to lose that at some point in his swing in an effort to get that face square, okay? So that is a matchup. Really like the shoulder alignments. So left shoulder over the left hip, right shoulder lower than left, and then that helps get his elbows pointed in the direction I like to see. So lead elbow at the target, right elbow back at that right rib cage. Now, the interesting thing about what he does around this relationship is he keeps the arms a little bit more on the side of the pecs, okay? So you can see how his arms are sitting a little bit more on the side of the pecs versus on top of the pecs. Typically, when we see that relationship, the humerus bone, which is the bone from his shoulder to his elbow, is going to hang back just a little bit, okay? So if I draw a 90-degree mark as a reference, you can see that he's hanging back just a little bit, and that's going to get his hands a little bit closer to his body at the setup. Now, if a player sets up with their hands too close to them, one of the tendencies is they could suck their hands and club in a little bit quicker in the backswing. That's not always the case, but we want to keep an eye on that. Now, I love his pelvis and spine relationship at address. This is probably my favorite thing about his setup. Pelvis is very neutral, okay? So when I draw a line through his belt buckle, you can see how high it sits. That's going to give him a lot of range of motion in his hips. If that pelvis pointed more downward, okay, that would pull his pelvis into more of an anterior tilt, and he would have limited range of motion in the hips from there. So really nice to see where he's setting up. Pretty neutral through the lumbar spine. Okay, and then as he moves up through the thoracic spine, it gets a little bit rounded. Okay, I like that. Okay, that is the spine setting up in more of a flex position. So as he goes into his backswing and creates a big turn, he's going to be moving into extension, and it's important that we start in some level of flexion. That way we have range of motion to actually move into. All right, so off the ball, he has a pretty basic shift, nice one-piece takeaway. I like how wide it is. A one-piece takeaway ensures that he's using more of his body to move the club back versus just his hands. So we can tell that once the club reaches parallel to the ground, we can see that there's a little bit of space between the butt end of the club and his right thigh, equating to a little bit of a bigger shoulder turn. Okay, really good. Continues to move up, same theme, nice and wide. So if we stop it somewhere around left arm parallel, okay, and we put a line on that shaft, you can see that it is wider, okay, than 90 degrees. Okay, so if I draw a line roughly at 90 degrees, you can see that that relationship is wider there. You notice that his right arm hasn't folded much, so you can see, we see this a lot from the bombers, okay? Because they're using momentum and they're using their body to turn it back, we typically don't see them hinging the club till late backswing or even through the transition, okay? So this matches up with this theme. Now, if we go to the down the line view, remember what we said. So he sets up with the hands closer to his body, arms are a little bit more on the side of the pecs. Now, as he moves back, watch what he does. So he takes the hands out just a little bit, okay? So hands go out. And what I want you to focus in on is how this lead arm is working around that pec. So remember what I said, it's on the side of the pec, and now it has to work back and find a way to get in front of the pec. So we can say that the hands are working a little bit more in front of the body or vertically at the start of the swing. Now, one of the benefits is if the hands go out, this is going to actually change the pitch of the shaft. So you can see as we move through P2 going to P3, you can see that it does lay the shaft off just a little bit, not too bad. Okay, but if we draw a line through the butt end of that club, it does point outside the ball. So it's definitely a little bit more on the shallower side, not to any destructive point, but just understand that the relationship of the hands working in front of the body more is going to lay that shaft off. And the other thing it does is it helps take that lead wrist to more of a bowed position, okay, or flat position, I should say. So remember what we said at address, okay? We said that he's going to have to, at some point, lose this cup in that lead wrist, okay? And when he gets to the top of the swing, he has done that, okay? So it's a pretty flat lead wrist relationship. The benefit of this is now the face is pointed more up towards the sky, okay? Or what I like to call square. Now, it's important that when you have a lot of body rotation, which he does, you have that face square so that you can create a matchup. If his face was open and he had a lot of body rotation, he would miss balls off the world to the right. So that relationship doesn't work out. Now, going back to the setup, remember what we said. He does a nice job setting up with a little curve in his spine. And what I want you to see is as he moves to the top of his swing, he maintains that same curve, okay? So you see he's got the same curve that we see from the down the line view, okay, maintained, okay? And then from P3 to 4, okay, he loses that just a little bit, okay? So obviously we want to create extension, okay? But I would say the rates of him creating extension is just a little bit more on the excessive side. Not a problem. Absolutely not a problem, okay? Because he set up the way he did on the left with his spine more in this curve, he has plenty of room to get away with that. Now, the other reason he creates a little bit of that excessive extension is because he doesn't have much pelvis rotation, okay? So remember what we said about the right foot at address, okay? He's going to be a little limited in terms of how much he's turning his pelvis. So when we get to the top of the swing, we see is absolutely zero daylight between the legs, signifying that the pelvis is not turning through a big range of motion. He's young enough now that I think he can get away with this. This is not something I would recommend for 95% of the golfing population. However, it will be interesting to see as his career progresses if that changes or kind of stays the way it does. Obviously, I wouldn't be changing anything. I'd be taking his swing to the bank as long as I can. Now, his downswing is spectacular. So we'll start with the face-on view, looking at his lead foot. Okay, so if I put a line on his lead foot, okay, what we'll see is we'll see that lead heel actually move a little bit towards the target. Let me redraw that just to make it a little bit clearer. So if we see the lead heel, okay, it's going to actually replant just like Rory does. So we did a swing review of Rory last week, a very similar move. So that signifies that he's getting to his lead side in a timely fashion, okay? The other thing that does is by getting the lead heel to move towards the target, he can now use that left leg really efficiently, okay? So you can see before impact, that lead leg is fully extended, okay, back on an angle, and that foot is actually getting off the ground. So if I play a few frames, you can see we're getting a lot of movement out of that lead foot. That's a great sign. That not only helps speed the club head up, but it also helps stabilize the face, okay? So really, really important. That was one of the keys to me understanding how to hit the driver much better in my own career. So really, really good there. Down the line view, a lot of body rotation, okay? So you can see his lower body is starting the downswing before he gets to lead arm parallel, somewhere in there. You can see his knees have already squared up, okay? So if we draw a line roughly across the knee line, you can see they're pointed left of the target. So a lot of body rotation. And what this does is this is going to help control the swing direction or roughly the path of the club. So because he's creating that body rotation, his hands are going to work more to the middle of his chest. So you can see they work more to the middle of his chest. And that as he keeps his lower body moving and rotating, a really nice impact position. Okay, so because it's a body-driven pivot, he's going to keep a lot of flex in that trail elbow, creates a nice lateral bend in the spine, which is a byproduct of rotating efficiently. And as I mentioned with the hand path, now we see his hands actually exit very low. Okay, so you can see how low the club is coming out below the left shoulder. Okay, here's the left shoulder as a reference. Okay, you can see that it's exiting below that. So if I had to guess, I would probably say that his swing direction is a little bit more on the neutral to left side of the spectrum. I would be curious to see what kind of ball flight he hits. But overall, in my opinion, this is a very efficient pattern for not only hitting it far, but also being able to control that swing direction in the face to path relationship, which is so important to playing golf at a high level. All right, so if we summarize this, I think breaking this down into just a few key matchups. One, the weak grip, he creates a little bit of flex in the backswing, so that creates a matchup. Two, by setting up with the hands closer to the body, okay, he offsets that by setting the hands more out, okay, so that's a matchup. And then the matchup of this right foot is because he does set up with the right foot a little bit more neutral, he does a great job with some of his pelvis and spine mechanics. Okay, so that does give him more range of motion to work with there. So those are kind of the three things that I think kind of stood out to me, was how he maneuvered his range of motion, how he got his face square, and then obviously the relationship of the hand path that was tied into everything. So really good swing. I think we're going to see this kid's name for a while. It'll be interesting to see, obviously still being in school, what his next moves are. But if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're new to this channel, and leave a comment below. You got questions, we got answers, hitbombs.com. We'll see you next time.